Happy New Year, guys. First of my history videos for 2017. We've finished Germany now, so I'm going to be moving on to videos about conflict and tension from 1945 to 1972, aka the Cold War. In my classes the past couple of weeks I've been looking at the Yalta and Potsdam Conference, which is what this video is going to be about. First thing to know about the Yalta and Potsdam Conference, they're all about how to deal with Europe after the war ends, World War II, once Germany is defeated. It's predominantly dominated by the Big Three. Now at Yalta, which is in the Ukraine, in 1945, in February 1945, the Big Three are Stalin, Churchill and FDR, or Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The Big Three are the leaders of Britain, the USSR or the Soviet Union, and the United States of America. They're called the Big Three because they're the biggest three countries fighting Nazi Germany, which in February 1945, the war's still going on, Germany's still around, Nazi Germany's still around. So they meet in Yalta, which is in the Ukraine, in the Crimea, I think. And they meet there to discuss what they're going to do. They haven't won the war, but they're winning it, and they know they've got to sort out what's going to happen. It's not the first of the conferences where they meet up before. There's a Tehran conference in 1943, so it's not the first, but it is one of the most significant. Between the war, Stalin obviously doesn't trust Churchill or Roosevelt, so there's an underlying problems between the relationships between the Big Three. FDR realises the importance of keeping this friendship alive. The Big Three are allies fighting Nazi Germany, who is the common enemy. And FDR realises that, well, they need the Soviet Union on their side. Churchill is less so, he's more argumentative with Stalin, so it doesn't work out very well between those two. And the relationship between Stalin and Churchill is fascinating. I would recommend reading more. A good book on that would be Behind Closed Doors by Lawrence Rees. Fantastic book and a really good documentary made by the BBC on it. Well, let's get back down to Yalta. They meet in February 1945, and here they largely agree on quite a lot of things. The war's still going on, so once Germany is defeated, the USSR and the Soviet Union, they decide, they agree to joining the war against Japan to help the Americans out. The Japanese still have a sizable army in an area of China called Manchuria, and so the Americans need a bit of help with that. The Americans are, again, winning against Japan, but the Soviet Union and the USSR's help against Japan would have been useful. So they agree to join the war against Japan once Germany is defeated. Another thing they agree on at Yalta is a division of Germany. They realise they're going to divide it into 4 zones. They're going to have a zone for France, a zone for the USA, a zone for Britain, and a zone for the Soviet Union. 4 zones. The tricky part of that is Berlin is in the Soviet zone. The Soviet zone is quite large, and anyone who knows the geography of Germany knows Berlin is in the east of Germany. So the capital city was going to be divided into 4 as well. One for France, Britain, USA and the Soviet Union. So Germany would be divided into 4, as well as Berlin. Long term there's going to be a lot of problems in the Cold War. So remember that Berlin is divided into 4 as well, and that causes problems later. So what else do they agree to? They agree to all join the the United Nations, which they'll set up. It's the capital, or the main place will be in New York, the UN building there. But they agree to all join it, which is different to the League of Nations, which was set up after World War I, when the Americans didn't join it, the Soviet Union weren't allowed to join it, neither was Germany. So they agree to all join this new United Nations. What else do they agree on? Nazi criminals will be hunted down and will be punished. They differ on what they think should be a punishment. Stalin famously states that they should round up 50,000 German soldiers and shoot them. Churchill is astounded by this and can't believe it, without truly realising, is Stalin joking or is he not? FDR, again, famously says, let's not worry about it, why don't we just shoot 49,000? So, obviously there's a bit of a joke there from FDR, I didn't truly realise that. But they disagree on really necessarily how they're going to punish Nazi war criminals. They do eventually punish them at the Nuremberg war trials, and the judges are Soviet, British and American judges. So they do make agreements on that. They do agree that there'll be reparations of some sort, but those are the major agreements at Yalta. There are other things they talk about, but just remember those four. Divide Germany to four, Berlin will be divided, Nazi war criminals, join the war against Japan, and they'll set up the United Nations. Okay, so remember those. The one thing they do disagree on, however, is Poland. Poland, let's not forget, is why Britain went to war in the first place, to defend Polish democracy, to defend Polish freedom. And at the end of the war, the Soviet army, the Red Army, is in control of large amounts of Eastern Europe and are in control of Poland. And again, the Warsaw Uprising in '44 is a very interesting thing to look at if you want to know a bit more about how the Soviets took over Poland. But anyway, they don't agree on the border of Poland because Stalin wants to shift Poland westwards. He wants to take Polish land in the east and give Poland German land in their east, so in their west. So basically Poland would move westwards. Churchill and Roosevelt, FDR, don't want that to happen. They think that's wrong. But there's not a lot they can do. The Red Army, the Soviet Union's army, is in Poland. What are they going to do about it? Nothing. So they kind of agreed to it on the provision that Stalin stays out of Greece, which is the British interest in Greece. So Stalin kind of agrees to it. Which does lead into this, another point they do agree on, which I should have mentioned slightly earlier, is that they do agree that Eastern Europe will be a Soviet sphere of influence, like a bit of a buffer zone. We'll go into that a little bit later when we look at Potsdam, but there's this sphere of influence, but these countries in Eastern Europe on the Russian, Soviet Union's border will be friendly to the Soviet Union. So that's the Yalta Conference. It, by and large, is very successful. Hitler is a little bit angry about this because he thinks it's all going to go to pot. The big three will argue and the alliance will completely destroy itself, but it doesn't happen. Well, things change because in 2 months' time, in April 1945, Roosevelt dies, who was the main mediator. So Roosevelt dies in April 1945, 2 months after the Yalta Conference. In the immediate, in May 1945, Nazi Germany surrenders. So again, the common enemy that these big three share is Germany, and that's removed after the Yalta Conference because Germany is defeated. Well, the next major conference is Potsdam in July 1945, the Potsdam Conference. The big three are still there. The Soviet Union, Great Britain, and the USA are still the biggest three countries, and so are still called the big three, but there are some personnel changes. You now have Clement Attlee, the guy who set up the Prime Minister who set up the NHS. You have Stalin again, he's still Premier or leader of the Soviet Union, and Harry S. Truman, who was FDR's vice president, who becomes the president. Key thing to know here is, not only have they won the war against Germany and there's personnel changes, Truman is anti-communist, far more anti-communist than FDR was, and he doesn't trust Stalin and thinks that Stalin wants to take over all of Europe, make the world communist. So there's real distrust between Truman and Stalin. They don't like each other, and Truman is less willing to negotiate. Well, a big thing you need to know about the Potsdam Conference, it starts on the 16th of July, the same day that the USA test the atomic bomb in the New Mexico desert. They test an atomic bomb. Stalin knew about the atomic bomb, but pretended he didn't because it was meant to be built in secret. But there's no trust. The Americans never told the Soviets that they're developing a nuclear bomb, per se. And on the first day of the conference, Truman took Stalin to one side and said, look, we got an atomic bomb. Not those words exactly, I'm paraphrasing, but he alerted Stalin to the fact that they got an atomic bomb. Well, ultimately the Potsdam Conference is dominated by disagreements. There's no common enemy now, so the cracks are appearing in the alliance which had won the war. So what do they disagree on? Well, they disagreed on free elections in Eastern Europe. The British and the Americans were under the assumption that Stalin would give free elections to Eastern European countries, which he controls because the Red Army is involved in Eastern Europe. But free elections mean very different things to Britain and America and the Soviet Union. Free elections in a democratic country means you vote for who you want to. In the Soviet system, that's not quite the same. So they disagree on free elections, and that's a clear source of tension. The Polish government is basically now communist, and so ultimately the big three disagree big time on that. They also disagree on reparations. Germany is defeated, and Stalin demands $10 billion from Germany, which is unlikely and unrealistic, it's never going to happen. Also, Truman realises what happened at the end of the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles. They crippled Germany economically, which just created an angry Germany. So don't make the same mistake again. So he agreed to not necessarily, well, I don't agree, but there's conflict there on how not to punish Germany. So they disagree hugely, really, on lots of major issues. Japan is still fighting the war. They're still fighting the war against Japan. But Eastern Europe's a real problem, because the Soviet Union is in charge of these areas. And obviously, the big three aren't very well. The British and the Americans are not very happy about it. There are other things they disagreed on, but those are the major points. There's a personnel change at Potsdam, and it doesn't go anywhere near as well as it did in Yalta. So there we go. Quick shout out to Louisa and Sophia. It was their birthday yesterday, and they asked me to shout out. I'll do a couple of giveaways in another video, and I'll do some more videos of the conference, so keep watching.